Keep up those wins.
What are we going to see?
So again, one of those things when your teammates are working alongside you is you have to make sure you're not bickering back and forth against each other. But we haven't seen that. We've seen people be really supportive and really take advantage of the fact that you can talk with each other. Yeah, speaking of talking with each other, looks like we can go to the stage with our first couple of teams here.
That's right, Steven. Thank you. We're back on the stage. We have 3 rounds in the books, but that means our 4th round of Swiss is up. Our first team is coming onto the stage. We have Team GVYC. First up, we have Anthony in the A spot, Sam in the B spot,
I don't know what that means,
and Julian playing cleanup on the C spot. Give it up for Team GVYC. Next up, their opponents take down and sit to their chairs. Their opponents are going to come onto the stage and get ready. Hopefully, we're going to have another exciting feature match. Maybe we'll see some 2024 decks. Maybe we'll do some more Burst of Destiny. We'll have to see. So the other team is going to be X3, Get Food. I've been there, done that. Now our first player, we have Alexander, Evan,
I love it, man.
and
That's
Dean.
a great name.
Good luck, guys.
Man, it's so fun. You can tell. I love it.
Now that's a team that knows how to work together. What a cute pose that they pre-planned there. You wonder if they were practicing that all last night or their cards all last night.
I think the pose was definitely really well synced up. I think if you're going to go for a feature match, might as well plan out the perfect pose, especially on the introduction.
Exactly. We'll definitely remember that moment when they take home that trophy. And it's one of those things, again, where like team energy is so important because, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is one of those games that's very thoughtful and you can't get up in your head and think, oh man, I should have made this play, I should have made that play. Obviously, when your team name is X3 Get Food, you already got a backup plan. Those guys are going to be fine.
You already got a backup plan. I love it, man. This is so good.
Hopefully they don't go X3 and Get Food. Maybe they want to go all the way. Maybe that's the goal they're trying to avoid. They're putting it
of the way
up front. You know, no hard feelings.
X3 Get
but
Food.
We're going all the way.
That's true. They could be telling all their opponents, hey, when you're X3, I got a great idea for you.
It's a message for them, not for themselves. It's for the opponent.
Not for them, but the opponents. Man, is that gorgeous punk deck box? It is. Man, those punk accessories are amazing. Our players are just here getting all set up. Obviously, it takes quite a bit for all the tables to be ready. Our great judges and staff making sure that everything is on the up and up and the duelists are shuffling. But I'm excited to see more of just this meta sort of play out. There's so many cool cards that we've gotten to see. Obviously, Fire King, obviously Snake Eye has been good, but there's still some unexplored stuff too, right? We've been seeing some branded play out there. We've been seeing some Kashtira play out there. Hopefully we'll get to see a little bit of that on this table.
I really hope so. I really want to see some Chimera play. I think people should explore the Chimera package a bit more. I think that particular deck, of course, it gets even better once we get more illusion
we might be seeing
support.
Chimera.
I really look forward to that one because that's like the little bit more, just one little push, I think, can really do it.
There have been some great illusion cards so far, and there's going to be even more later this year, but we do have to focus on the format we have. That's the funny thing about Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, always looking off into the distance of the new cards to come. But it is true that, like, right now, there's just so many cool ways to protect yourself against your opponent's strategies, but many of them are vulnerable to the same thing. Think about it. Those branded and illusion players, they do want their graveyard, so they're hit just as equally by Dimension Shifter.
I think in a format where there's so many disruptions from the hand that could just overlap, cause maybe a little bit of a collateral damage into your own deck, you have to be very, very careful. Drone Lockbeard, we've seen time and time again where it was just underperforming against the matchup. I wouldn't say underperforming, but rather the deck already adapted to what draw would lock you out of, and you still find your way to get to the end board. That's very, very crucial. And if you don't know how to do those lines, you're going to be struggling a lot more. Like, you can't play slowly, you can't just think on the spot. When you're put at a feature table, people will see that if you're thinking too long, it's going to raise some issues.
That is the most difficult part when you think about this. This is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Competition, so they're not just playing the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. They are literally competing against one another to do that, and there are rules for that, so you do have to keep up a reasonable pace of play. But again, our great judge team is there to make sure they do that. But just something to think about at home. You know, when you're practicing your combos at home, maybe you're doing a little shadow boxing. I know I do that, where you're just playing the cards by yourself against imaginary opponents. You really need to imagine after that first cool card that you search from your deck to your hand, there's the Droll and Lockbird. The first time that you decide you're going to add something to the graveyard, there's the Dimension Shifter. You have to imagine those worst case scenarios. That way when you're up there on the top tables, maybe it's not really that bad.
Okay, yeah.
Well, hopefully our opponents are completely versed in that. They seem like they're all in good spirits. Nobody seems like they're particularly nervous up there. Obviously, you don't get this far in the tournament without a little bit of a good sport there. We do see the records are a little bit mismatched there. You'll see that on the GVYC there, they're going to have 2 wins and 1 draw, and then on the other side, it's going to be 2 wins and 1 loss. We're going right into it to find out who's going to get the wins and who's going to get the loss in our Round 4, Game 1 feature match.
So we are at table B. Okay. Sam versus Evan
versus
Kashtira. The deck list, we have our Despia branded and Kashtira, another blast from the past.
Yeah, a little bit of Shades of Master Duel, certainly great decks in their own right, and both of them are really well equipped to face this fire
which is
format.
kind of nice
But
because
time
we're
to find out
going
who's
to
going to go first.
Looks
Looks like it might be... Okay, it's going to be Despia branded. Okay. So Sam's going to go first.
Starting off with the Albion, we're going to send a card into the graveyard for cost, and then we're going to resolve the effect depending on what that is. Likely going for the draw.
Yeah, usually you're just going to send that Fallen Elboss for the draw and then send Albion.
Branded Fusion. Okay. Well, there must be some way to load that back into the hand. So there are many, many ways for the Despia branded deck to manipulate the graveyard to retrieve resources.
So he's probably going to try to do the play to get Mercurier in hand with a monster on field.
We might end up seeing Gimmick Puppet Nightmare before we know it, but we did just draw a card here. Let's see what is coming up next. And by the way, beautiful copy of branded. Just amazing ultimate.
That looks like a Euro ulti.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to see Nadir Servant.
Not all my cards are, but that one should be, yeah.
All right,
Nadir Servant on the start. Interesting.
Well, going in the extract, not exactly a uniform play, but using the Guru to draw,
it was in this
perhaps. It's a little wild here. I guess we are maybe just trying to sculpt that hand, get the perfect combo going, get as many resources as possible. Also trying to feel out the opponent for any sorts of points of interaction from the hand, right?
Oh, yeah, okay, so now he's out of the extra deck. So Despia branded.
Pretty safe, I would imagine, by now.
Now, with the Nadir Servant, that's going to lock us out of the extra deck for a Despia branded deck. I don't know how much of an impact that's going to be, but we are going to play into the Dogmatica strategy using Dogmatica Maximus, banishing the Garura.
Ooh, and seeing the Ghost Mourner and Moonlight Chill drop down. That's going to negate the effects of the monster, and if it's sent to the graveyard, going to be a little effect damage along the way.
I think this is a very effective use of that card. Locking out, losing out, rather than just losing out cards in your extra deck and giving your opponent additional setup. But there's a follow-up from Sam activating Triple Tactics Talons and revealing this matchup entirely.
Exactly.
I'd probably get rid of the unicorn
and all sorts of beautiful rarities, but it is true that the game is up. Sam now can carefully plan out his plays and know that Evan is going to be slamming down those level 7s on the board.
This is a bit difficult. Now, revealing from the hand 2 Fenrirs, a unicorn, and a Triple Tactics Talon. Talons is going back into the deck. There's a little bit of redundancy in the hand.
Yeah, there's not really a way that you can escape those Kashtira. Obviously, the Unicorn can go for the Fenrir and vice versa. There's a lot of cool plays you can make, obviously, by grabbing the spell cards from the deck.
Attempt to use Nibiru.
And is this going to
we had a Nibiru.
We're going to see a call set now. Don't write off the Despia branded. Yeah, they can fuse on your turn as well. Let's not forget about that.
They absolutely can. It's our turn. Remember, Shades of Super Polymerization there.
Oh, Fusion Duplication has been activated. That's what the setup was for with the Albion. Now we get to play branded Fusion on your turn.
Great play. Let's see what kind of monster he makes based on the materials we're sending to the graveyard.
So that's actually a very interesting trap card. Being able to copy the effect almost feels like the Predator Plant Verti Anaconda almost.
Yep, this game is
a little bit, and we are seeing
probably going to be over.
Gimmick Puppet Nightmare being sent to the graveyard.
But is that as effective when it comes to the Kashtira deck, which doesn't necessarily need to access the extra deck? I know the new Kashtira variants are a little bit more combo-centric. But do they need access?
Well, but if they've got a monster on the board, it doesn't matter if you're locked into Gimmick Puppets or not. That might be the worst nightmare for Kashtira because they can't special summon from the hand if there's a face-up card on the field, right?
Yeah, that is the most difficult part for sure.
It's also about...
It's almost like giving just a token or something. It doesn't matter what it is if there is an empty board.
It's not about that.
That's what Kashtira wants, and if there's not, things are not going according to plan.
My opponent now cannot special summon with Gimmick Puppet.
Taking a moment to consult the teammates there again. That's the cool thing here. You can just talk to your friends like, hey, man, how's this feel?
I mean, if you're in position B, I think you need to have the most amount of focus. You need to be able to focus on your game. You need to be able to focus on your opponent's game. You don't want to talk to your teammate and all of a sudden forget what you were doing yourself.
It is wild, though. They have to be both the Yami and the Yugi, right? They got a duel and be the voice inside saying, hey, maybe you should play this.
And I think we are going into a Gimmick Puppet lock. If that's the Albion Sanctifier, there it is.
What a great monster. Not only is it 3,000 attack and it can't be targeted, which is amazing on its own, but being able to bring out 2 monsters monsters, one to each field, and obviously you're not going to want the Gimmick Puppet. You're not going to want anything on that Kashtira board, and we've managed to do that before anything happens.
Now, did Evan draw into an out? There are certain outs that are accessible, I would say, for this particular matchup. Maybe you go into your Kashtira berth, get yourself a normal summon of one of your Kashtira monsters in your hand, and that may be able to play the out. But this is a very tough situation. When you're locked out of special summoning, except for anything that is Gimmick Puppet related, I don't think the Kashtira deck has anything like that.
It's pretty difficult. And
I mean,
the fact that you can't target that
normal summon for this
Gimmick Puppet to bring out 2 monsters, one to each field, and obviously you're not going to want the Gimmick Puppet.
Wait, how did he make
position
that again?
B, focus on your...
So they have...
And I think
it was a dogmatic monster,
which is amazing on its own, but being able to bring out 2 monsters, one to each field, and obviously you're not going to want the Gimmick Puppet. You're not going to want anything on that Kashtira board, and we've managed to do
that's
that
exactly how he's done
happens.
Okay,
now, did
that's
Evan draw into an out? There are certain outs that are accessible, I would say,
I just blinked
for
and
this
missed
particular matchup. Maybe you go into your... Maybe
then he gets to use that.
You can't need to point a card sometimes.
Okay. Tough position for Evan on this turn.
It's probably going to be.
And there's tons of damage here. Over 8,000.
I mean, this is game.
And I believe this could be game, unless Evan drew into a disruption from the hand that will keep him in.
Evan, seemingly steely face, not particularly worried about all these monsters, so there might be one last card that we're not seeing in his hand.
No, we know the 3 cards in his hand. The 3
now we're seeing the attack
monsters that can't be used.
And he takes them all. And yeah, I believe that is game. We are sorting out the graveyard. I think we're preparing for the next game. So Sam J taking game 1
that was quick.
This Team YCS tournament in the
very
round 4.
quick.
Again, think about it. We talked about how all these different decks are out there, but they all can fall to Dimension Shifter. And really, Kashtira is like the arch nemesis of this deck. It can banish everything. It doesn't have to worry about it. But Sam just doing a great job of showing that, like, hey, I'm not worried about it. I've got my game plan. And before you can even start yours, here's a monster. I'm going to give you something, but it's not a treat you're going to like.
This is a very interesting deck list. Now I'm looking at the main deck total, 60 cards.
60 cards. Man, if you really look at that table, take a look at
how about 6?
The lavender sleeves right next to that white deck box. That is a big stack of cards.
I mean, why not play all the options? I was very surprised to see the fusion duplication coming online so soon. I remember, if your opponent does manage to resolve a fusion duplication, I think that was the key play that secured the game for this one. It sets up that really dreaded Gimmick Puppet of Nightmare.
It also makes Albion feel even stronger than before. It's not just a generic card that you're just using to cycle through. That means when you see Albion and it's sending for cost, there's not really a lot you can do. So people might be thinking about DD Crow in the future for their side deck options.
I think was thinking about that is a really good option. Also works really well against the voiceless voice strategy. But the fusion duplication, what other implications is there? Well, what if your opponent decides to activate Ash Blossom? You know, one of the big counter cards against the Brand of Fusion, but that also loads it into the graveyard. And you said, do you have a second one? Do you have a second one for your own turn now?
It's a little spooky to say that because, again, so many great fusion cards. And, again, the branded strategy does have some of its greatest cards in the graveyard. But at the same time, the fact that you just can't stop them. Think about it. Imagine if he opened the branded fusion. He plays the branded fusion. They stop the branded fusion. Okay, set fusion duplication. Your turn. We're going to do this again in just a second.
Exactly. It's a really rough spot. And it's something that a lot of people don't account for because a lot of people don't realize that the branded strategy have shifted into adding the fusion duplication. It's such a powerful card. It was one of the newer cards that came out recently.
Crazy, though, when you think about a 60-card stack, he just happened to get luck of the draw. Everything he needed. That good.
Literally.
I mean, it was also very interesting that the Nadir Servant was also activated. Because when the Nadir Servant was activated and they start seeing like the fusion cards, you feel like, oh, maybe they're tripping over their own play. But this was perfectly weaved together just so that the lockdown of Gimmick Puppet was going to happen unless you had some way to disrupt it. But what made it worse was the triple tactics that got the peek into the hand where like, oh, I'm guaranteed to resolve this. I am going to do it. I got rid of your triple tactics. You're not going to be able to draw additional cards to dig for the out.
It's pretty crazy when you think about it. That didn't have to be Gimmick Puppet Nightmare. That could have been anything.
It could have been.
You could have put Fallen of Elbaz on his field, and that still would have been too much of a problem because, again, what makes Kashtira great can also be its greatest weakness. Yes, they can pile on those giant monsters onto the field, but they can only do that on an empty field or with the effects of their spell cards. So once you have that Gimmick Puppet Nightmare, the nightmares do begin.
So how do you think that these players are going to side into each other? I mean, these are pretty well-known matchup, you know, about a year ago, 1 season ago, almost, like 2 seasons ago.
It's difficult because many of the things that would work against other decks, they aren't just perfect against it. So imagine we've seen a lot of soul releases across the board because it's so strong against the Fire King strategy. It can be very strong against the Snake Eye strategy too. But that is an effect that activates in the main phase. The main phase is frankly too late for a lot of these Sanctifier loops. You really aren't going to be able to get ahead of the Gimmick Puppet Nightmare before things happen.
I hope that maybe we're going to see Forbidden Drop. I think there's been like a rise in the trend of Forbidden Drop. There's actually interesting ways that you can use Forbidden Droplet to bypass Drone Logbird. As a turn player, you can say you activated a card that would add a monster into your hand, and then during your turn, when it resolves, you get to activate the first card if it's a quick effect because we're still in resolving the chain. So you just activate, drop, and throw a monster. Now you can't chain a Drone Logbird because you handed the card, and that just completely just disrupts the entire opportunity to use the Drone Logbird.
Now, I'm interested to see if the Ghost Mourners stay in this deck.
Yes,
I feel like Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill, it's an excellent card. It does so much in so many different scenarios, but I don't feel like just a one-off negation is going to be enough to really stop this branded onslaught.
Yeah, this is, I think Sam has quite the advantage, but right now, we're getting ready into game number 2.
Game number 2.
All right, let's see who decided to go first. I probably would be wanting to go first if I was Evan.
Yeah, definitely want to get that set up. At least this is one matchup where you know you're not going to get hit by the D-Shifter. In fact, if you get hit by Dimension Shifter, you're okay with that.
Hey, that's
the making of Dimension Shifter right there.
It does turn off, like,
well, that puts Sam on the back pedal now. No access to the graveyard. That means the Fusion Duplication is not going to work out this time.
And that does really help because, again, now you can play a little bit more confidently. We're seeing that extra deck just slung through for Pot of Prosperity. Time to reveal 6 cards. Sure, there's half damage, but oh wait, there's no battle phase this turn, so it doesn't feel that bad.
Also, with the Dimension Shifter already landed, we're not going to worry about Drone Logbird. Drone Logbird needs to be sent to the graveyard to resolve it properly. There's a Drone Logbird right there, but don't think we're going to see that added to hand.
Depends on the rest of your hand. You'd rather get Planet
Probably not, but man, gorgeous copies from the Megaton of Kashtira Birth. I definitely need to trade up for some of those. Those are amazing.
Birth, very powerful.
Looks like we are going to take the Birth, and Birth is such a great idea here because, again, once they activate a spell card and they have 3 or more cards in the graveyard, then you can go ahead and banish 3 cards from the graveyard and maybe get those painful assets out of the way. So while Dimension Shifter will cover you for next turn, you've got great options for later.
What that tells me is he probably has access to Unicorn.
Your opponent has to activate spell cards to get those fusions in. And if you're able to just banish all the options, it hurts a lot. Take away the Fallen of Albaz, especially when you banish it face down, you don't have access to it anymore. And now we're going to special summon out Kashtira Unicorn. Unicorn being able to add a Birth?
Looked like a Birth, yes.
You too, man.
So probably means we already have Kashtira Theosis in the hand.
There's the Theosis. Oh, wait, hold on. That is a Birth. I think there's another monster we're going to summon. It's going to be the Ogre. Likely we're going to be playing the track right, either Big Bang or Preparation.
Big Bang or Prep.
It's good to see Ogre. You know, some people have dropped Ogre from their list, but again, trap cards are good. We have found that out so many times at the top tables here.
I would say if Kashtira Ogre lands an attack, manage to resolve its effect to look at your top 5 cards and banish one of them face down, you're in for a very rough spot, as they already know what you're going to draw. They get to control it a little bit. If it's a card that's going to be very impactful, they'll take it away and make you more or less have a dead draw coming up.
Exactly. I mean, you can't get any more Kashtira prepared than that, but adding the Kashtira preparations on top of that with Kashtira Ogre's effect is just genius. Again, it's such a strong deck. Yes, it's very linear in the sense that it just kind of builds it block by block, but here's that Kashtira Theosis in order to grab our next card.
I believe it targeted the Water Kashtira, which is the Ogre. Now we're going to summon out the Fenrir. Fenrir is going to lead to another card being added. Man, not being able to activate Drone Logbird under these situations, let the Kashtira player set up much more, and it's a lot safer.
Set up mucho board.
Now, we can't get ahead of ourselves. Again, Evan is still going to have to rely on his teammates in order to carry some of the momentum here. One of those two has to win, and we're not sure what the results are on either side. But again, just playing very concentrated. Even Sam just staring at the board. They are just in it.
I wonder if we're going to see some of the combo-esque parts of Kashtira, but we're under Shifter. Likely they're not going to commit into their extra deck because a lot of those extra deck cards do rely on using the graveyard. And so just leaving a board full of Kashtira, a field full of Kashtira, is very difficult. Once you activate your first effect, things are going off.
Oh, so many things are going off. Now, here's the thing. Using Kashtira Unicorn, obviously you can start to rifle through a Despia branded extra deck, but what are you going to take there? Are you so afraid of the Gimmick Puppet Nightmare lock that you go for the Sanctifier?
I think in this particular case, you would not need to. You have established your field has monsters, the Gimmick Puppet won't do anything. I think you might go for some of the stronger hitters, maybe the Mirror Jade.
Mirror Jade would certainly keep everything at bay, and there's the preparations being flipped face up.
That is a very dangerous card. If a trap card gets activated while you control a Kashtira monster, that is going to allow you to look at your opponent's hand and rip one out and banish it.
Well, let's see what the first card that Sam will play voluntarily is.
Patchwork.
Not a bad choice.
That's okay. Now, the branded birth, sorry, not branded birth, Kashtira birth, let me go and get ahead of myself here. That's not going to, get any value at this moment because everything's getting banished. You're not going to be able to set up the additional 3 cards in the grave just yet. That's a future plan.
It is. Evan was very excited. If you caught that, he looked immediately at the Kashtira birth before letting his opponent go ahead and resolve the effect because it's not quite there yet. Dimension Shifter doing most of the work here. But we have added our cards from the fight for Patchwork. Let's see what happens next.
Face up.
Well, while under Shifter, you're not afraid of getting drolled either, so there we go. There's some benefit. Oh, Cosmic Cyclone targeting the face down card.
And it is just another Kashtira burst. Swing and a miss there.
That's the tough one.
At least the unknowns are now known.
Now, preparation has an additional effect. Don't forget, you can special summon one of your banished Kashtira monster or summon one from your hand. Actually, if you think about it, both Birth and Preparation are capable of summoning from hand and summoning from the banish.
Well, it'll help because if anything bad happens... Oh, speaking of which, here comes Dark Ruler no more.
Very powerful card, turning all of the Kashtira monsters offline now, but there will be no battle damage or any damage of any sort going to Evan.
I think at this point, Sam is just trying to establish a board, unless we're just setting a monster face down.
I know what he's doing now.
Setting a card and activating Polymerization. That is a 3 material.
The gimmick puppet.
That is very smart, not letting the Unicorn take away the Guardian Chimera. Guardian Chimera is going to go off here. That's going to be able to draw 2 cards and also destroy one on the field.
Now, taking a look here on our chain links, I wonder what it is that you're going to destroy. I mean, I'm always terrified of Kashtira, Fenrir, but the birth actually is important too, and so is the preparation.
I think you're going to have to destroy
too many cards to just make a meaningful pick and then basically be out of this jam.
But looking at Sam, he actually took the play really, really well here with the Dimension Shifter because one of the material was a Mercurier.
And speaking of playing well, it looks like the blue team has taken each of the first games. So Sam has the backup from Julian and Anthony as well. And that means that X3 get food. Well, hopefully they don't have to get food soon.
They've got another round at least. They've got another round, so nothing to worry there. But I think Sam playing really well under the Dimension Shifter. It is a very tough place to be, but there are certain cards that do activate in Banish, such as that Mercurier. Being able to draw 2 cards, another very, very awesome option. I mean, even some of the Despia cards, if they get banished, you do get additional cards. But not having access to the graveyard does hurt. And we are losing the second copy of the Birth.
And now he doesn't have an access
down, 1 to go if he's even running it. It does help that getting rid of those spells means that future spells are going to be safe. And so now we're going to draw 2. For now. You never know with Kashtira, right? They can always jump back in. But it looks like we're going to go banish that Albion.
Okay, drawing more cards. See, now you can't activate your own draw lock, which we did see in Evan's side. That's allowing Sam to take advantage of this. Like, I'm going to dig deep into my deck now.
Kashtira is definitely a double-edged sword. But speaking of double-edged swords, Heartbeat's Feather Duster is going to clear out that last spell and trap. So doing a great job of just clearing out all the Kashtira cards. Obviously, we're not going to be battle damage this turn, but that may not matter if Sam is able to basically rifle through all of Evan's strategy and leave him with maybe a monster or 2.
Lucky for Sam, he did recover a couple of cards along the way. That Feather Duster probably coming in pretty useful, as Kashtira are able to recover resources from Banish as long as they have additional Theosis, which you still have access to Unicorn. You can still get additional Theosis. If you can banish that Theosis, which is pretty easy within the Kashtira strategy, you can start getting back some of your banished cards, including the spells.
I feel like we probably would have seen the Feather Duster sooner if he had it. It might have been drawn from the Lure of Darkness, but obviously Feather Duster for 1 is a thing since that card came out so many years ago.
And now we're getting to see fusion deployment. We're trying to avoid hitting the graveyard as much as possible. Now, that particular copy of Guardian Chimera, that can be targeted because that polymerization is banished thanks to the Dimension Shifter.
So shiny, you can hardly see it, but I believe that's Blazing Cartesia on the field.
Blazing Cartesia.
It is. Ooh, we are now playing
now he
the
gets to go to
opening. We're going to set up the strategy. Wow.
Now, it hurts so many plays. That's super poly. Oh, yeah, so many plays for Dave. But there's a Luber, the Jester of Despia. So getting those resources back.
Sam is committing pretty hard into this particular play, as everything that he plays now is getting banished.
And Fusion Deployment is just such a great card. It shows that fusions have come along such a long way. I remember when King of the Swamp was first released. Wow, this is the height of fusions. And now we have all these great cards to really let you maximize this game mechanic.
So Sam summoned out one of their favorite monsters, Aluber. What a good monster.
Just
really
incredible.
Good, really good.
Now, it may not hit the graveyard to get its powerful graveyard effect, but it does look like we're going to do Branded Fusion here.
I think Sam needs to clear out this field. You can't leave the Fenrir, you can't leave the Unicorn.
He's clearing out the
field. And you know you don't have access to the graveyard, so a lot of the follow-up that usually comes from the branded player, there's just no access. You need to be able to answer everything here. Evan kind of looking not too solid in terms of like the resource in hand. And so if all the monsters here get destroyed, this is going to be a very pivotal moment for Sam to kind of regain the tempo.
No, you're absolutely right. Sam, if he is not going to lose to Team X3 Get Food, he needs to clean off his plate. So there is no food left to get.
We're still dropping stuff.
Well, there's going to be no damage done. So guaranteed Evan will get a turn back. But this is a difficult situation. Without raid slots, nothing boosting up the attack. So we already have one monster accounted for, thanks to the Guardian Camera, having such a very, very big stat line. But Sam committing into making bigger monsters, that's also going to drain out his own resources.
The deck keeps going and going. The good news, playing a 60-card deck, you've got plenty more cards left.
And we get the Lubellion.
Yeah, he can't use that.
Now Lubellion definitely helping.
Does Lubellion have the... What was the cost for the Lubellion effect?
He doesn't have a Lubellion effect.
Did not quite catch that, although if you were overhearing, we just had our time called. Remember, that's just for the main event, so that's not going to affect the 22 some odd minutes we have left on the clock here.
Okay, cool. So
but again, it's true that, this deck likes to banish and it likes to reuse cards from its banish pile, so the Dimension Shifter may just be accelerating the strategy more than it's actually slowing it down.
Well, of the two monsters that likely are going to be cleared, there's going to be the Unicorn and the Fenrir. The two that would give you the most amount of resources are the ones being cleared off the field.
No, I'm definitely not worried about Kashtira Ogre at that point. Obviously, it's a big body, and certainly it can disrupt your plays, but it's not doing the same thing as Unicorn, which would be going through your extra deck, and it's not doing the same thing as Fenrir, which would be clearing out your field.
So the copy of Lubellion was able to attack because it did not use the effect. I think Sam ran out of resources, and I think that was the intention, just to get a monster just large enough to run over the Fenrir.
And this is
We've got that play down.
Sometimes cards are good because of their effects, sometimes they're just big bodies, and Lubellion happens to be both, but a classic here.
This is not going to work.
Left, right, AB, we're taking a monster.
We are taking the Guardian Chimera of all cards. It's very difficult here because there's also the Cartesia.
I think you let him take it.
I think Cartesia can perform a
We let them take it.
And it looks like she is.
I was going to say, I think
so enemy controller is certainly a powerful card, but the graveyard is back, and putting a Luber, the Jester of Despia, in the graveyard now is insane.
Oh no, and now we have a negate on the field, which is going to be the Predator Plant, Dragostapelia.
Just an incredible card. Not only does it put a Predator Plant counter on a card, negating its effects, but it changes it to level 1, which can be detrimental to the Kashtira strategy. They love the level 7s.
It's a great follow-up for Sam, because even if Evan right now has a Kashtira monster, it's likely just going to be negated, and the Predator Plant is stronger than most Kashtira monsters, except for
if
Ogre.
I was Evan here, I would have gone battle phase.
He's only got one card. This may be the end of this duel.
I would have gone battle phase.
We do have 2 out of 3 matches
and tried to attack into the
Cartesia. So we might be able to peek into them. We'll see.
The 60-card deck versus the 40-card deck, and we do have a Unicorn.
But it's not gonna
no, that Dragostapelia is going to put in quite a bit of work.
Exactly. Now, Kashtira monsters are strong, but their effects usually happen after the fact, so attempting to activate the effect here, all you need to do is slap that Predator Plant counter. It'll be negated, and it'll be too late for Kashtira Unicorn to be able to reply back.
So in this case, even with the Unicorn, what a great card. I don't know if that's going to be able to. We're going to see the activation of the Dragostapelia, turning that Kashtira to level 1 and also negating its activated effects.
Still a big monster, but just not quite the same star rating.
And you also don't get to look at their extra deck either. Oh, that's a double whammy.
You don't get any knowledge for future plays. You don't get any knowledge for future games.
If I was Evan, there was a slightly better way of playing
unfortunately, yes, Kashtira, if you're a fan at home of Kashtira,
with Ogre,
it's
go
kind of going down to the wire for them. But still a big monster on the field. 2,500 is nothing to slack at. And because we had Dark Ruler no more, there was no life point damage.
We did get multiple summons, and we're going to special summon into Typhon.
The crisis is here.
I mean, I think this Typhon was more or less forced into, but we're trying to simplify the game state. As Sam did use most of his resource, most of it's banished.
Now, speaking of simplified game state, actually nothing has changed. So Anthony still facing against Alexander. Same thing with Julian versus Dean. So nothing's changed just yet. That means that this game is certainly important, but we're not down to the wire just yet.
But the Karteza has been added back into hand during the end phase thanks to a fusion monster being sent to the graveyard. That could be big. So it gives him another fusion.
Now, the Star Slayer certainly is helping out. Remember, it should be preventing the activation of the effects of 3,000 attack or higher monsters. Is that right?
That is correct.
It is the Zeus counter, after all.
Yeah, and being at 29, do they have a counter for this? Now, even if they can't activate their effects, battling is still allowed. And we're going to see if that is going to be enough. If we can survive the turn, I think there may be a chance we might need another copy of Unicorn. We need a very powerful card, even or the field spell. There's certainly outs for him. Oh no, the Branded Fusion.
Another turn, sending the cards to the graveyard.
And we're seeing the Bestial Lubellion and the Fallen Albaz. Ooh, what a beautiful rarity.
Oh man, is somebody showing up with style with this Branded deck, using both materials as OTS Ultimate Rares.
I mean, Sam truly highlighting that under D-Shifter, I'm still able to play. I'm not getting out of this. And his execution of taking out all the spells and traps was very pivotal to basically be built up to this moment.
Cannot summon Mirror Jade.
We talked a lot about Mirror Jade, but it's finally being slapped down on the board.
The Mirror Jade cannot activate in this particular case, but it is mainly there just to attack over that Typhon. That's going to cause 100 damage.
At 100 damage is the beginning of a lot of slaps here. Again, we're going to have 1,800 from the Aluber. And the Lubellion.
You cannot.
And we're going to see more attack. I believe that Lubellion was the one that was from the previous turn. There's a lot of damage coming down.
Just so much. It's incredible how this deck just continues to put bodies on the board. Now, we've seen that work against it, right? Brandon is not invincible, and when you eventually claw through all of those effects, it may not add up to game, again, because they're not really doing a whole lot other than just putting resource on the board and sort of recurring. But, well, they've got a little bit of backup from their Steel friends.
I think Evan is in a really tight spot. I'm not sure if there's going to be enough. If there's going to be, that is Brandon's lost on the field. Lubellion's on the field. We have a Mirror Jade that has not activated the effect. You need to play through 2 cards now.
You're absolutely right, and it looks like Evan has no cards in hand, so there is not really a lot in the Kashtira strategy where a single card is going to get you out of this. For the most part, and there's the Brandon Red being set.
Brandon in red, there's going to be additional fusion. Now, there's not going to be Guardian Chimera, to my knowledge, because we already see it being banished right there. But there's just so many things you can still fuse into. And you can even lock them up, maybe get some burn damage in with some of the other Despia cards.
Would be a little scary if that's the case. Drew a card.
Is it the perfect card?
I mean, the heart of the cards is the thing sometimes. Lucky is a part of skill.
So, I think Sam's playing this really, really well. Just showcasing his knowledge about his own deck. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's run it back through and through.
Well, the good news is this is a deck that you can play test in multiple different formats, but Kashtira Fenrir is a great way to get back in the game.
And we're going to get Mirror Jade.
And that is not happening. We're never letting that one stick. Great top deck.
Wishful thinking, though, unfortunately, for us Kashtira fans.
They're extending the handshake, and they fist bump, and Sam takes this one 2-0 for this particular team match, but it's not over just yet. They're still the teammates.
No, super exciting. We can see players still playing on the other side. It's only when you see that match slip start working its way down the table that you know that the game is truly over. But Sam, just what a competitor. Not phased by any of the Kashtira shenanigans. It's a great deck.
That looked
Obviously,
almost too
so
easy.
Much last format.
But
right now, it's got to put a little extra gas in the tank, and it did not show up this time.
I think Sam really showed his proficiency with the branding card. I think I'm going to bring it back to a point which you mentioned where, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to, take the draw, assume the draw locker did land and how to play around, and I'm assuming he did the same thing with D-Shifter, where, if I get D-Shifter, well, I'm going to play around my line and try to maximize the benefits of all the cards that do get to trigger while they're banished, and we got to see that right here. Really, really well played.
Sam smiling now, and Evan and them going back and forth having a great time, but somewhere in Sam's brain, it was activate Dimension Shifter protocol and just went to work.
I think that was really well executed. And considering that, I think one thing that I think Evan may have overcommitted was setting that additional card. If he kept that birth.
It's true, if he kept the birth in his hand. But, I mean, technically, you never know what can happen. We'll have to see that.
With a face-down birth, I think that was there was no need to commit into that. I think that was a little bit like, I'm going to set a bluff, but But I think the card itself is just so high value. Imagine if he did have that birth to follow up.
Now, I do see the Sacred Slip being passed down the table, so it might be that was our game decider right there. So we'll find out soon who won and who lost overall as a team.
Well,
but again, just really cool to see those duels. It's one of those things where